When you say that's not my job at work, it's self sabotage. I want to unpack this a little bit with you guys because really I've seen people just absolutely demolish their own careers with one simple phrase: that's not my job. So I get it. We all sign up to do some sort of job. There's a job description usually that lists all the things that we're responsible for, and we expect to be paid fairly for performing those duties. And from a pay standpoint, I've literally heard people say to me, Irina, that's just not my job. I don't get paid to do that. And they were right, they were correct fundamentally. But there's these unspoken rules in the work environment that people don't think about sometimes, and how it can negatively impact them long term. So that's what I want to talk about. Um, so let's say one of your managers comes to you, or directors or whomever, and says, hey, I need help with this extra project, whatever the case may be, on top of your regular duties, right? If you say that's not my job, you just now created a very new reputation for yourself, and that will stay with you pretty much for your entire career there. Even if you try to change it down the line and you do start stepping up and volunteering for extra projects, your manager more than likely won't forget that that's not my job conversation that you had with them. So it's very, very important that you remain open to taking on extra responsibilities. There's good benefit, there's the actual benefits to doing this. One is you will grow your own skill set. If you take advantage of extra opportunities to work on projects that maybe you're not comfortable with, well, now you're learning something new. Maybe you're working with a different team that you generally don't work with, but you will for this period of time so you can get the project done. Well, now you're building a network and you're building relationships internally. And all along, you're also building your reputation. People will see you as someone who steps up and wants to help and contribute, and that people remember. Okay, people will remember that at your job. And honestly, leaders, your own leader, your own boss, whomever that may be, they look for people who are willing to stretch themselves a little bit, to put themselves outside of that comfort zone, to show and prove that they are willing to take the extra steps, and they will keep them in mind for those opportunities for promotion when they do open up down the line, right? So if you're saying that's not my job, you're you're still going to get your annual performance review. It may say meets requirement or meets expectation, whatever the labeling is there, and you may get a very small monetary increase because you're meeting expectations. But if you flip that and you take on these extra responsibilities and you do step up and you help out the team in a time of need, and you have that reputation that you're like that A player that somebody's going to be looking for when they need help, that annual performance review can bring on a hell of a lot more money for you. Okay, because you're gonna get marked as above expectation, or it exceeds expectation, or outstanding, whatever the highest rating is. I've personally received two raises within the same year at multiple companies because I stepped up so much. And personally, I was doing it for selfish reasons. I was doing it because I wanted to build my own skill set. There were things I didn't know, there were things I wanted to learn, and I wanted to be an A player. I wanted to build a reputation where people saw I'm a subject matter expert, I'm someone you can rely on, I'm someone that you can go to if you need help. Was it a lot of hours? Yeah. Was it stressful sometimes? Absolutely. But did I get the monetary reward? 100%. So there's definitely benefits and downsides to saying no really only impact you at the end of the day. So you have to remember that, because when you don't get that promotion and when you don't get that extra opportunity to showcase your skill set, you will have no one to blame but yourself. Okay, you can sit there and you can bitch and you can blame your boss and your coworkers and you're so busy and my calendar. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's because you said no. And that sounds tough, but that's why you're not getting what you're looking for, in maybe in your current role or down the line. So really, it's very, very important that you build a reputation where you show that you're willing to go that extra mile. And it can really build your network as well. You can transition into different internal positions when the time comes, if those positions open. If your internal network has seen the results that you can bring to the table by taking on extra challenges, they'll remember, oh, hey, Josie is the one who stepped up. She didn't really know how to manage a project, but she consulted with other team members and she asked for help and she ultimately delivered a really good result. People will remember that. Okay, and you want to be the first person they think of when the opportunity for a promotion comes up. You want to be the first person on their mind for the right reasons, not because you said no. So make your choices carefully because your words do matter at work. Um, and also, you don't want to show up at work and be the bare minimum person, right? I have my 10 check boxes and I'm going to check each one of them, and that's my job. I've done my job. I mean, that's great, but again, that'll put you at a just very mediocre level in everybody else's eyes, and that will impact you financially in a negative way down the road. So what you have to decide what you want. If you're okay with just staying in your position, if you're okay with not taking on extra responsibility, then say no. I mean, that's absolutely your right. I'm here just to talk about what can happen in a negative manner if you say that's not my job, which I've heard people literally say to me. Um, and so there was really nothing I could do when this person came to me and said, that I mean, that's not my job. All I could say was, okay, I understand and respect that. I'm not going to push it on you. But guess what happened? Positions opened up down the line, and that was not a person that was on my mind to promote. Why would they be? They said no. So you really have to think many, many times before you say, that's not my job. Okay, maybe you can say something like, look, I have a lot on my plate right now. I can contribute in this way to this project. I don't know that I can take the whole thing on. I just don't have the bandwidth right now, but I can contribute in XYZ manner, right? That's better than saying that's not my job. So be careful with your words. Be careful with being just very blunt and saying no. Um, and of course, it ultimately your career story will be impacted by how you take on extra work, or if you do or if you don't. I'll tell you a story from one of my younger days in leadership. I was in a staff meeting and the director at the time just randomly said, hey, there's going to be a new project that's coming up. I need help from someone on this team. And it was just dead quiet in that room. No one spoke up. And I said, I'll do it. I didn't even know what it was, but I said, okay, I'll help out. And he kind of just stopped for a few seconds. He was silent. And then he said, there's no extra project. I was just testing the room to see who would step up. And guess what happened 6 months later? I got freaking promoted. Okay? And it's not because of that one instance. That was one out of many examples of when I said, yes, I'll help. I'm happy to assist. I'll support this initiative, whatever the case may be. It's not one and done. There's no one silver bullet. You have to show the same behavior consistently over a period of time so that you can again build that reputation. And that's what I focused on, and I got promoted many times over the years. And also the sweet part about that was the money that just kept coming my way in the form of retention bonuses or raises or whatever the case may be. So in a nutshell, you really have to be careful when you say no. Maybe say, maybe I can help, instead of no, that's not my job. Again, it ultimately depends on what you're trying to accomplish at work, what kind of reputation you're trying to build, and what your actual career plan is for yourself. It looks different for everyone. But I've seen this phrase be very, very damaging to people over the years. Directly, people that I've worked with and that have worked for me that just shot themselves in the foot by saying things like that. And also indirectly, I've seen it on other teams where others just refused. They just said, I just, that's just not something I'm willing to do or I'm going to do. And then they gave their reason why. So let me know what you think. That these have been my experiences, and I like to share with people to be very careful when they talk about that's not my job, and why they do it. But I'd love to hear from you and what you've experienced, maybe personally, or things that you've observed on your own teams or other teams or other companies. Please leave some comments below. If you enjoy the video, consider liking and subscribing, and I hope you have a great day.